While standing in a small Oklahoma courtroom and listening to the judge's final verdict, Brad McGahee thought he caught a lucky break. Originally, he had been arrested for unintentionally buying a stolen horse trailer and was waiting to hear how many years of prison time he would have to serve. Instead, the judge told him that he needed to learn a proper work ethic and decided to send him to the Christian Alcoholics and Addicts in Recovery program, also known as CARE. There was just one problem with this. Brad wasn't addicted to anything and didn't require rehabilitative services, at least not yet. A few weeks later, Brad found himself standing in front of a conveyor belt where he was forced to pull guts and feathers from dead chickens. What had started as his lucky break soon became his worst nightmare. According to Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting, on October 4th, 2017, judges in Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Texas, and many other states have started to offer private rehabilitation facilities as an alternative to prison. This is being offered to those involved in drug crimes, but also to those only convicted of nonviolent crimes. Defendants are told that they will be spending 1 year in the CARE program, instead of spending any time in prison, which sounds like a great option. But what they are not told is that they will be forced to work on chicken processing plants, live in communal bunk bed housing, and be subject to dangerous working conditions. Using these private rehab facilities as an alternative to prison is allowing our justice system to participate in punitive action outside of the established legal parameters, which could lead to a dangerous chain of judicial loopholes. So today, we will explore the problems, causes, and solutions to private prison alternatives like CARE, something that is being called a modern-day slavery work camp. While Brandonsbergen was working on a chicken processing plant, a metal door suddenly crashed down onto him. Considering he was only given staples in his head as treatment, he thought he needed to seek out more comprehensive medical help. But he knew that if he tried to leave the CARE program early in order to get it, the drug courts in his county could sentence him up to 15 years in prison. So instead, he was given Tylenol and forced to continue working immediately following his injuries. Almost 4 years later, and he still suffers from spinal damage and chronic pain. So let's look at our problems of modern-day slavery and physical torture. First, while slavery and indentured servitude have been outlawed in the United States for many years, CARE has still somehow seemed to find a way around these laws. At the time of a trial, defendants are told that they can either go to rehab or to prison, where the obvious choice is rehab. But they do not understand what this decision will fully entail until they're already standing in front of a conveyor belt. According to the Oklahoman, on October 11th, 2017, people within this program are forced to work for free with the constant threat of incarceration if they stop for even 1 minute. They're expected to withstand long and grueling hours with no pay, no actual rehabilitative services, and no guarantee of safety, which leads us to the second problem. Chicken processing plants are one of the most dangerous places to work in all of the United States. In fact, according to the National Employment Law Project in April of 2017, chicken processing plants report up to 27 cases per day of workers who are severely injured. And in many cases, like Brandonsbergen's, they are given a minimal medical treatment and forced to continue working immediately following their injuries. This is leaving many people within this program subject to physical torture by forcing them to continue working despite serious and painful injury. In 2014, Jeffrey Weaver suffered a hernia after lifting many heavy bags of poultry product. His injuries were so severe, in fact, that CARE was able to file for workers' compensation on his behalf, which cashed out at about $2,500. But Weaver never even saw a single cent of this money. In fact, after a month, he was kicked out of the CARE program entirely because his injuries left him unable to work. So let's look at our causes of lack of laborers and private organization regulation. First, the CARE program is self-proclaimed to being dedicated to helping people free themselves from serious addiction. In fact, according to the CARE website, last accessed April 2nd, 2018, in order to even get into the program, one must first admit to having a substance abuse or addiction issue. Yet they're still accepting people only convicted of non-violent and non-drug related crimes. Why? Janet Wilkerson, the founder and CEO of CARE, originally had the idea for her program back in 2003 from a former business partner. Later, when she heard that the processing plants in her area needed workers, she decided she would help. By creating a partnership with the Simmons Food Incorporated chicken processing plant, she's able to provide them with free laborers while simultaneously collecting a six-figure paycheck. By falsely stating that she will provide AA classes and free work experience to anyone in her program, she is able to continually convince judges to send her more and more nonviolent offenders that eventually become slave laborers in these camps. Second, private rehab facilities are subject to different regulations than public ones. As an example of this, we can look at workers' compensation cases. Not only is CARE not required to pay their workers, but they're also not required to provide compensation in case of injury. They are able to do this by forcing incoming workers to sign a disclaimer form that changes their status from employee to client, leaving them with no legal claim to their compensation. But according to Tulsa World on October 17, 2017, CARE is essentially committing insurance fraud by filing for compensation in the first place and keeping the money for themselves. This compensation system is poorly regulated and is leaving many injured workers with no other option but to go to prison when their injuries leave them unable to work. While Brad McGahee was attempting to help an injured coworker, his hand was caught into a conveyor belt and sucked up into a nearby machine. Several excruciating minutes later, he was able to pull his hand free, only to find that it was facing backwards. His injuries were so severe that doctors ordered him not to work, but CARE workers accused him of being lazy and injuring himself on purpose. So Brad was left with that same ultimatum of working with a mangled hand or going to prison simply for buying a horse trailer. So it's time to look at our solutions to this issue on the legislative and personal levels. First, the issues found within this program far outweigh any type of possible benefit. People are maimed, humiliated, and left to live in abhorrent conditions. If our society is going to allow a private alternative to prison to exist, then it must be subject to the same type of regulations as any workplace or correctional facility. These regulations are outlined by the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, or OSHA. If OSHA were to force CARE to follow these rules, then they would be subject to the same regulations as any type of workplace, which guarantees safety for its employees. Private rehab facilities should not be held to different standards than public ones, especially when those standards allow for the exploitation and abuse of their so-called clients. Second, according to Salon on October 15, 2017, the recent attention surrounding this issue has alerted the ACLU, who is currently considering legal action to help Brad McGahee and other injured coworkers, while also ending the abusive practices of CARE. It is important that this shifts from a simple consideration to successful legal action, which can happen through the pressure of an informed audience. Here, I have a copy of the letter that I will be sending to the Oklahoma chapter of the ACLU, along with a petition that you can sign to show your support. This will help urge them to bring justice to this broken rehabilitation system, and all you have to do is sign. The ACLU has been fighting against discrimination like this for years. Let's let this time be no different. Today, we have looked at the problems, causes, and solutions to private prison alternatives. While Brad McGahee entered the system with no prior addictions, he now relies on daily pain medication just to cope with his injuries. Private rehab facilities are left with far too much power and far too little regulation. Perhaps it is time to lock up the CARE program and throw away the key